creative, so it was just absolutely amazing.
That was fantastic, guys. Great job on that. Okay, so composing ourselves.
All right.
All right, we're going to talk about to have and to hold. And we're going to define that for you in a minute, but we just want you to know that all these things that we are sharing are things that come from our own experiences. Not just experiences of doing marriage retreats, but things that we've had to learn, some of them the hard way, about how to grow, how to learn perspectives on one another, perspectives on ourselves, how to learn a self-awareness, which is really another word for humility. And self-awareness is difficult because there's always spots that we don't know about ourselves or we're not aware of, but as best we can. And one of the best things you can have is this. I live with this philosophy. There's always 20 or 30 things that somebody could point out to me that I need to change.
Right.
So if someone, including my wife, points out one of them, I shouldn't get all upset. Because there's so many more she could point out. If she points out one, you know what? Thanks. I'll start working on that one. Because in my mind, I already got at least 10 others that are already there. So if we can maintain that mindset in our marriages, it leads to less friction and more constructive conversation. Does that make sense?
Yeah, amen.
Does that help a little bit? All right, so now, I won't say that we have mastered this. I know I haven't. Because there are times when she'll point something out and in my mind, just the wrong time. I'm like, oh, so you're looking for a fight? No, but very quickly I can kick into, okay. Let's talk about this for a second. Let me listen for a second, all right? To have and to hold. All right, to have, our definition, is to receive without reservation the total self-gift of another. Not ownership, but unconditional acceptance. You kind of got that? All right, and to receive without reservation the total self-gift of another. Just think about that. That's pretty powerful. Then to hold, a lifelong pledge of physical affection and tenderness, to be available to the other in body and soul. Now that enough is a whole conference, if you think about those things. But we're going to try to dive into it a little bit and really work on our marriage. Okay, my wife has to grab her sheet of paper because I, like a knucklehead, didn't bring it up. All right. So when we're under stress, sometimes in our marriage, we can stop having and holding.
Yes.
All right? Things can start to get a little quirky, and we kind of don't want that self-gift anymore. Hey, if you're going to talk to me like that, I don't need this. And we stop holding. Hey, I don't want to be close to you the way we're going right now. But we start putting conditions on having and conditions on holding. Or am I the only one that gets there? And then, that limits us from what we can be for one another. Genesis 2:18 says, the Lord God said, it is not good for the man to be alone. I will make a helper suitable for him. I became a disciple as a single person. So when I read this passage, I was like, yes. Give me a helper. I want a helper right now. I don't want to date. I just want a helper right now. Then in chapter 2, in verse 22, it says, then the Lord God made a woman from the rib he had taken out of the man, and he brought her to him. The man said, this is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman, for she was taken out of man. A lot of scholars believe this was actually a song that Adam was actually singing about this creation that was made. For this reason, a man will leave his father and mother, be united to his wife, and the two will become, one of my favorite scriptures in the Bible, one flesh. Then the man and his wife were both naked, and they felt no shame. So God created this man and this woman. He put them in a tropical environment, and he gave them no clothes. Sounds like my honeymoon. So what does it take for that feeling to last forever in our marriage? That creation, that thing that God created and that setting he put us in. No matter where we live, what would it be like? What does it take to live that way perpetually? Where we're just always in honeymoon phase. We fondly remember our honeymoon, by the way. We had actually a bump on our honeymoon, but now, we're older than many of you. We went to Acapulco for our honeymoon in 1990. Okay? Now, at the hotel we were staying at, unfortunately for me, Bob Hope, who some of you will remember, was filming a special at our hotel.
We were actually
we were in there. We had video of us actually, the camera pan, and we were sitting there watching this happen. Unfortunately for us, we got on the elevator to come down, and onto the elevator with us becomes some of the Bob Hope girls.
Like the Bob Hope dancers.
The dancers.
We're aging ourselves, but if you...
They were scantily clad.
Las Vegas dancers is sort of how
they were not dressed fully. They were like this tall. And they were standing in front of us in the elevator. And I confess to my wife, honey, I may have looked down. You're like, don't judge me.
They look down, so you think.
Yes, yeah. Look down. Trying to look down. Trying not to look. I was like, honey, I was tempted to look at these women, and that was an issue we had to work out. It didn't take long. She was very forgiving, and then it worked out. But the rest of our honeymoon was awesome.
Yeah.
So remember it very fondly. But how do we take that and continue that for 32 years? So we're going to talk about that a little bit, okay? So, yes, please.
No, the real bump, Darren didn't say that, but the real bump was, we went back, it's siesta time, right? So we went back to our room and I had a nap and I had a nightmare that Darren ran off with one of the dancers. So I woke up, I was so mad. I was like, you ran off with this? Like, I didn't run off with this dancer. Like, I didn't even look at the dancers. I was looking down at my feet,
And she woke me up to tell me, you left with one of the dancers. I'm like, I've been asleep right next to you. I've done more awful stuff in my wife's dreams that I've apologized for in the morning for stuff I've apologized for more dream action than actual real stuff. So, that's how it happened. But, okay, so what do we want to do? What can we do? We're going to run through these. Buckle up, write down. We're leaving the slides. First thing we want to do is make our marriage and physical connection a priority.
Yeah, and for me, and I don't know if it's just me, but I think sometimes with women, it's the other slide.
Okay. Did I do it? There it is.
I might be doing it with this paper though.
Okay.
But I visualize a plate, okay? And when Darren and I were dating, if I think about the plate being sort of my mental and emotional capacity, I mean, Darren was that just main course on that plate, right? I mean, I was thinking about him all the time. I was talking about him all the time. I remember actually I had a talk with my boss at work. Talked to me one day. She's like, you know what, because I was actually calling from work. And she's like, I hear you talking to your boyfriend a lot at work. Can you not do that? I was like, oh, okay, I'll stop it. But he was the sort of the main course on my plate, right? But as we got married and different things were to happen. Okay, well, we have a kid. Okay, so I pushed him a little bit more to the side of the plate, and then we have another kid. I push him a little bit more. Okay, we got ministry stuff going on a little bit more. Finally, he's like becomes this little speck on the plate. And and I really wasn't making him a priority. I think about years ago, I remember my daughter when she was a little girl, had a friend over for dinner. And so we allowed her to sort of dish up her own plate, and she just filled the whole plate with macaroni and cheese. We had other things on the table too, but for some reason she filled her plate with macaroni and cheese. So I thought, you're gonna need something else. So I said, well, let me see your plate, sweetie. So I put some carrots on her plate. So she just smiles, and she takes her plate back, and literally just one by one, she's just sitting there kind of looking at everybody, and she takes like carrot, and one by one she takes every carrot off of her plate and puts it back on the table. So but I think sometimes I'm like that with Darren. I get like, okay, he needs to be my priority. I'm really gonna focus on him, and I'm gonna focus on our marriage. And then he gets back on that plate, and I just start like one by one taking him off the plate again and letting other things be priority. So so really my desire, my goal is for Darren to once again to really be that main course that's on my plate.
I think a couple of questions we can ask ourselves about this aspect is, what am I doing to adapt to my spouse's needs? Because as you're married, as the years go on, you're changing. You're changing mentally, you're learning stuff, you're changing physically. A lot of things are changing. What are you doing to adapt to your spouse's needs in this physical way? And would your spouse, not you, but would your spouse say that you are the number one priority in their life? Would your spouse say?
Sorry.
So if you can answer those questions with yes, my spouse would think that I'm the number one priority, then amen. But if the answer is no, or you're not sure, then just have a chat about it. It doesn't have to be a finger pointing session. It can just be a conversation. Hey, I feel like we're a little off. Tell me what I can do differently. Tell me what you feel. How do I make you feel? See, those are questions that, you ask them and then you brace for what's coming. But that's okay, because you need to know. You want to know if you want your marriage to grow in a great way.
Yeah, just thinking of what takes up your mental energy. What is your focus? And, I know in Luke chapter 10, it talks about Mary. We read the story of Mary and Martha, and how, Mary was, or Martha was so worried. She was focused on dinner, focused on cooking, focused on all these different things that had to be done in the house. But Mary chose what was most important, which was sitting at Jesus' feet. And all of us, everyone in this room is busy. We all have busy lives, and technology makes it even more, busier. But what's our priority? I have to think, what is my priority? What am I really focusing on? Am I being like Mary and having the attitude that, there's a lot of things going on, there's a lot of calls, there's a lot of, sometimes Darren and I are, talking, and my phone's there, and I see a text come from somebody. I'm like, I feel like I should answer this because I don't want that sister mad at me because I didn't answer her text and all this. But really, my priority is him first, and then I can do all those other things. Come on.
I think Sharon and I will do this. We'll talk about, okay, so let's talk about things that you like that I may not be aware of. Because you'd think after 32 years we would know kind of all that stuff. Well, it was 2 years ago that my wife finally came to the realization that I don't like bananas. Like it was 2 years ago. We've been married for 30 years before that. But somehow it just so happened. It happens.
My thought is, who doesn't like bananas? Like, how can you not like bananas? Of course.
I was too busy working out. Think of this in your marriage. What takes most of your mental energy? Just don't try to skew it. Just what takes most of your mental energy? My marriage gets most of my mental energy. I spend time thinking about what could I do better? What could I do that would make her day special? What could I do for our anniversary or for Christmas or for some holiday? What could I do to make her? And I even spend time in my mind, and I'm trying to gauge you guys. I don't know how you guys feel about us talking about this stuff. I literally fantasize about my wife. Like I have these fantasies constantly because I'm thinking, if I'm going to think about somebody like that, it's going to be her. And I can get very creative in my head. I mean, I can. So I think that, that's what my mental energy is right here. Now, we've been doing ministry for a lot of times, and Ed was very gracious in sharing all the things that we're involved in. And that takes a lot of time and a lot of mental energy. But man, there's nothing that comes before this right here. Amen. Not one thing. So just remember that, guys. So the next thing, since we're talking about that stuff, regular loving touch. In Matthew 8, verse 3.
I'm just going to read a few scriptures. Touch is something that Jesus did, something that the Bible talks about quite a bit. In Matthew 8, verse 3, it says, with the leper, it says, Jesus reached out his hand and touched the man. In Matthew chapter 8, verse 15, with Peter's mother-in-law who had been sick, it says, he touched her hand and the fever left her. In Matthew 9:29, he touched two blind men. It says, then he touched their eyes and said, according to your faith, it will be done to you. Yeah. And then in Matthew 17, verses 6 and 7, it says, Jesus, after Peter, James, and John saw the transfiguration, they were so overwhelmed that they just passed out. And it says, when Jesus heard this, they fell face down to the ground. I'm trying to read. It says, Jesus came and touched them. Get up and don't be afraid. But the touch is a very healing, like even science tells us that touch is very healing. And the question to think about is, how often do we just touch each other? And it doesn't have to be, a sexual touch. It doesn't have to be anything special. Like what I learned with Darren is a lot of times if he's, at the computer working, and if he's sitting in a seat and I'm standing up, basically puts his head right about here, right? So just because my hands kind of flail around and I just needed something to do with my hands, a lot of times I would just, sit there and start just rubbing his head. And, I learned that he really enjoys that. So I was like, oh, this is something simple, something simple I can do. But, just touch. I mean, it's very healing when we touch one another.
And research shows that touching more creates a stronger bond in releasing oxytocin. And that's a good thing.
Help us out, Deb. We're probably messing all the medical stuff up.
Deb's going to correct us at lunch. All right. And then it says that, hold hands, rub shoulders, hug, kiss, give high fives, or even fist bumps or bottom pats. I don't know if you guys ever heard of bottom pats. We bottom pat a lot in our house. We just do. But all that stuff, see, when you give those quick touches of affection, it does something to us physically, which does something to us emotionally, which does something for our connection.
Can I just add one other thing?
Please.
Too, I think what helps as well is saying what touches we like. Like there's something about when Darren touches my back, like if we're walking and he just touches my back, it just relaxes me. I don't know, it just really makes me feel special. So, if there's a specific touch that you enjoy, let's tell our spouse what that touch is.
When you first see each other after your day, maybe you've been on appointments, maybe you've been at work, whatever it is, when you first see each other, try this. Just before you do anything else, hold each other without stopping for 60 seconds. Now you may think 60 seconds, it's not long. When you just have to stop your day. Because you're on your day, you're on a roll, right? You got things, you walking in the house, like got to return this call, got to send this email, I got this thing on, I got to mow the lawn. I mean, I got all these things you got to do, right? So you got all these things going on, and to stop, just to stop it all and hug each other for 60 seconds. It's significant. Now, Sharon does that a lot. Like I'm up in the morning, I'm the first one up, and by the time Sharon wakes up, I'm like done more than anybody. Like I've gotten all kinds of things done. When she comes, she wants to hug me. I'm like, man, I'm in the middle of a roll right now. But she'll stop me. Just stop me. And she'll say before she does it, I know this is going to drive you crazy. But it's important what it does. So try that and see what happens. It makes a big difference. All right? Okay, the next thing. Take time to remember. We got a few scriptures here that we're going to have because I think it's important to take time to remember and listen to these.
And these are all, these are biblical principles. But again, take time to remember. When the Israelites were getting ready to enter the promised land, we hear, this. God calls them to have courage. It says, you may say to yourselves, these nations are stronger than we are. How can we drive them out? But do not be afraid of them. Remember well what the Lord your God did to Pharaoh and to all Egypt. You saw with your own eyes the great trials, signs, and wonders, the mighty hand and outstretched arm with which the Lord your God brought you out. The Lord your God will do the same to all the peoples you now fear. There was something about, throughout the Old Testament, we see God constantly wanting to remind the people of what he had already done to give them courage to face what was ahead, right? And then in Matthew 16, when the disciples were feeling overwhelmed and faithless, like, hey, we cannot feed these people. How are we going to feed all these people? I don't get it. And Jesus says to them, don't you remember the 5 loaves and the 5,000 and how many basketfuls you gathered? That when they could just remember, this had just happened, right? And this is fewer. They were facing fewer people. 4,000 were hungry this time, 5,000 were hungry before. But Jesus is reminding them, don't you remember how I fed these people? It's going to be okay. Yeah. So remembering really makes a big difference. This is something that we read. It says, research consistently show. Oh, sorry, I'm reading the wrong thing. This is from a dating coach, okay? She says, make a list of 3 of the happiest moments in your marriage. Spend a few minutes each day briefly reliving those moments in your mind. The results will amaze you. Darren and I try to spend a lot of time. Actually, I think this is one of these things that we really work hard on, but we are just, we love to remember things. We'll talk about what it was like when we first met, what it was like when we first saw each other, what was it like on our first date, or what it was like on our honeymoon. We talk about that one a lot. We, just what were things that were times that were special, because when you remember those times, it helps you to be able to face whatever's going on now. You realize, boy, we've been very, very happy before, so I know we can be happy again.
And it's important because in the busyness of life, we can forget what God has already done in our marriage, and then we can tend to get almost hopeless that he can do anything. After 32 years, you would think, oh, you guys got it figured out. Man, I'm hoping we got 32 more awesome years. So things are going to change. They're going to change in us. So I want to see what God's going to do next year, and then next year, and then next year. I want to remember what we have now, because I'm thinking as the years go on, I want new memories to remember. Amen. Does that make sense? Amen. So we want to do that.
I just want to read one other thing. This is from another dating coach, right? Oops. But she says, have you lost that loving feeling? Then try this. Step 1, write down 10 qualities you loved about your partner when you first met, and read it to each other. You think about that. There's a reason you married your spouse, right? So if we think of 10 things, 10 qualities that we love. And it says, brainstorm a list of 10 fun things you did together when you first met, and then do 1 date per week, enjoying bringing back that loving feeling. So that's just something you might want to try.
And I think those things, guys, they really work. We've done them. We've done them. They really work. They really remind you. Sometimes we forget, and that's why God constantly is reminding us of things. Well, one of the things we did, there was a marriage retreat we did, and on the Friday night they had this game night. And one of the questions was, what first attracted you to your spouse? Physically. What physically first attracted you to your spouse? And people were naming all these things, and they were having fun. And then, we got to that question, and my wife said, his hair. That was Friday night. The retreat went on till Sunday. So the rest of that weekend, I started asking Sharon privately, so what is it now? So she's like, oh, your hands. And then, I should have stopped, but I couldn't, right? I lacked self-control, all right? So I couldn't stop. I think, honey, what really is it? She looks at me, and she says, very lovingly, she says, oh, your personality. I'm like, man, that's the kiss of death right there. And she never actually came up with one. So at this moment, I'm living on personality right now, guys. That's all I got. So the thing I keep working on constantly is not my physical stuff, it's all personality. Trying to improve my personality as the years go on, because that's all I got right now. But for us, that's so much fun to talk about that stuff. It's so much, it never became awkward. It was never this thing. We laugh because we are in this together. We take time to remember things. I do remember my wavy black hair. I remember how much time I took spending on it. I remember all of that. Maybe that's why God took it away. I don't know. But I remember that stuff. But Sharon still loves me and shows me constantly. So we take time to remember. We look at pictures sometimes. Like, I remember that guy. Literally, one of the brothers one time he was over at our house. He saw a picture in our house, and it was Sharon and I. It was our wedding picture. And he literally said, was that Sharon's first husband? Now, I know that's some of our situation in here, and there's nothing wrong with that, except when I was the guy. I'm like, no, man, it's me. Take time to remember, guys. It will help you enjoy the days going forward. We got one more, I believe. All right, maybe two more. All right. All right. Give compliments and accept compliments from your spouse.
And again, this is a biblical principle. You look at Solomon and his bride in Song of Songs chapter 1. It says, he says, how beautiful you are, my darling. How beautiful. Your eyes are doves. And then she says, how handsome you are, my beloved. Oh, how charming. And our bed is verdant. So Darren was looking up verdant today.
Yes. It means green and grassy.
But, and then the angel speaking to Mary when he was announcing that she would have Jesus, says the angel went to her and said, greetings, you who are highly favored. The Lord is with you. Imagine how much that encouraged her to be able to do what she ultimately did. Jesus, when he met Nathanael for the first time, it says when Jesus, in John 1, it says when Jesus saw Nathanael approaching, he said of him, here truly is an Israelite in whom there is no deceit. So just compliments really have a strong result. Mean a lot. I get it.
And I think when we compliment one another, the biggest thing for me, I grew up in a family that never said complimentary things to one another. We never said the words I love you, never, ever, ever in my household growing up were those words ever said. And the most complimentary thing my dad said to me, I was in high school, played high school basketball and baseball. In basketball game, I went 7 for 7 in the second half. 7 for 7 mean I did not miss a shot from outside, all right? That was kind of my role. The next morning, my dad said to me, man, it's about time you do something. That's how I grew up.
Wow.
So giving compliments did not come natural to me. But here I'm now married to a woman. I grew up with 2 brothers. We didn't care. I don't care if you think anything good about me. But now I'm married to a woman, and that doesn't fly. So I'm now learning how to compliment my wife. And also, as she compliments me, I'm having to learn actually how to accept compliments. And I don't know if that's anybody else's experience, but I had to learn how to give them and learn how to receive them. Because I have no experience in this area in my life. I just didn't. So learning that was a whole experience. But I love that now I compliment my wife in my sleep. Because there's so much to compliment about her, first of all. And I just want to make sure she knows that for me.
Yeah, and accepting compliments, I think for many of us, I know for me for sure as well, accepting a compliment is very difficult. And, you think about the expression we've heard, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. So the person who is saying it, they're the ones who are the authority on what they're saying, if that makes sense. If I look at Darren and say, oh, honey, you are so handsome, then it's I'm the one. I have decided that he cannot correct me. In the same way, if he says, you're beautiful, then, which, he was talking about that earlier. Sometimes when he says, I'm like, really, are you just saying that or just whatever? But even sometimes when I cook something, he'll say, oh, this is really good. And I'm like, no, it's not my best. And, that's what I'm thinking in my head. And often that's what I actually say. But that's such a, pouring water. That's actually an insult. That's saying you don't know what you're talking about. You're not very smart because you're saying those things and they're not true. But, being able to just accept them and saying simply thank you.
Amen. For time, we're going to move right on. We got 1 minute left, looks like. All right, so the final one is have fun. We're going to talk about that a little bit. Have fun. All right, Deuteronomy?
Yeah, again, a biblical concept in Deuteronomy 16, the festival of the tabernacles. It says, be joyful at your festival. I won't even read the whole thing. And then Solomon's bride, the bride herself, she says, take me away with you. Let us hurry. Let the king bring me into his chambers. We rejoice and delight in you. We will praise your love more than wine. And also in Song of Songs, it says, come, my beloved, let us go to the countryside. We're in the countryside now.
Yeah, it is. There it is. We're here. Let's do this. Do this.
Let us spend the night in the villages, okay? I'm pretty sure we can say villages. Let us go early to the vineyards to see if the vines have budded. Ooh.
You gotta have fun in your marriage. We laugh all the time. Even our kids, when they were probably high school age, would say things like, our family's crazy. Because we laugh, we had fun, we found ways of having fun. We find humor in just about everything. Because let's face it, man, if you don't, whoa, this world is dark, man. You gotta find humor in it. That right there is the picture of an actual place. It's called the Sybaris, and it's in Chicago. There's a few in Chicago. There's one in Indiana, but it's called the Sybaris. Now, that is the picture of one room. That's a room at the Sybaris. It has a pool. Now, some of them, and there are different levels of it, but that one has a pool. One of them has a slide down into the pool. Has no windows, and each one of the rooms. Each room is a little cottage, like it's its own. It's not connected to another room. This is the one in Northbrook, Illinois. All right, and then there's a bedroom. There's a sauna. There's like speakers. There's this high-end sound system with speakers where the pool is. There's a waterfall that comes down. You hit the button, you got the waterfall. You got your own music playing through these giant speakers in the pool area. You got all that happening. Then in the bedroom, there's like mirrors everywhere. No, this place is amazing. This place is amazing. My wife took me there once. The first time we went, we've been a few times. But she took me there once. I still have that memory. It was so much fun. It was so much fun. But we find things to have fun. I plan things so they can be fun, because we need to laugh together. We need to laugh at this life that God has given us. Let's enjoy it. Let's make sure it's a real blessing, because the blessing really is we have Him and we have each other. Thank you guys so much.